So I'm back here again with Nodi Ipp from Cape Town, South Africa, and he's just been inspiring us with stories of trust. So carry on.
Okay, this theme, I just slowly but surely grew in me. I had a friend who we would see each other once or twice a year, and we found that instead of taking 2 days to get used to each other, and by the time he was ready to leave, we were really open with each other. We decided to give each other what we called license. And license really meant a bond of trust. So as soon as we saw each other, we had license. And we could say anything and be anything. And it just meant that there was this deep understanding. We could revoke the license, or we could carry on with this bond of trust, which we have until this day. That was in the, when was that? Also in the 90s. That theme continued on. When I came back to South Africa, a long story brought me to a stage where I decided I needed to get a job. I had left full-time teaching and I decided to go into the presentation of the Virtues Project along with my own particular project, which is about Evolve the Self, the 11th Commandment, which is a book that I've been working on. And I had gone into corporate, I'd done a few corporate presentations, and then 2008 arrived and everything sort of faded from me. So I needed to go back into earning a regular salary, and I got a job with a family whose son had a tough time at school and had been diagnosed Asperger's. He had been at home for a good few years, and when I came into the family, he was still very, very skittish in the most, in a delicate, very, sometimes extreme, a very loud sort of a way at times as well. And when I went in there, I asked them to give me this trust that I had an understanding about what I was doing, and I would explain to them what I was doing all the time. But my key thread, my key touchstone, my key anchor was always, how am I responding to this boy so that he will build trust with me? He used to shout at me. He used to do sometimes he was very angry, but it wasn't about me. It was about his difficulties of who he had lost trust in the adult world and the school system. And slowly but surely over time, I kept going back. Even when we had the breakdowns and the meltdowns, as Asperger's people do, I would go back, I would reset boundaries. I used the 5 strategies and the virtues as much as possible to keep clarifying, to be as good a companion, spiritual companion as I could be, always the big challenge, but always coming back to this trust theme until I ended up doing a talk at the Asperger's group, autism group, which I called Trust the Invisible Ingredient. I had read a book by Stephen Covey Jr. called The Speed of Trust, and in that he'd given this lovely idea of the fish in the water. The fish does not notice the water until it's out of the water. Same in families, same in schools. We do not notice when our trust is gone until it's not there. We think of all the many breakups, we think of all the betrayals. When things are assumed trust, things go very, very well. As soon as there's that other betrayal that happens, it undermines almost everything, and a really hard thing to recreate. So I did this talk, Trust the Invisible Ingredient, and I'm hoping that at the mentorship I will, in June in Baltimore, that you, Dara, are organizing, I will be able to focus on this key ingredient, which I believe is absolutely necessary in all environments for all kinds of amazing reasons.
Yeah, it's essential. And so when you were talking about how you were committed to using the 5 strategies, can you give us an example of perhaps maybe what it sounded like when you were going back to the boundaries, or a virtues acknowledgement or a virtues guidance that you may have used?
Okay, I will try to think of one. I think one of the images that I always carry in my mind with this trust idea is that when I arrive in an environment, in particular with someone who is very sensitive, highly sensitive, I first try to connect. I try to get the child, the person, to dock their boat. I create what I have in my mind a bay, a quiet, peaceful bay, in which their vehicle can find a safe harbor.
Oh, what a beautiful metaphor.
Now, to do that is usually about the virtue, the companioning process, which is asking questions. How are you? What is it like going? What? Tell me about the things that you're interested in. And a lot of humor, acknowledging the person's strength. So this particular chap, he loved flying, and he had been learning to fly microlights and model planes, and he knew everything there was to know about any kind of flying. So whenever we talked about that, I would, of course, acknowledge his great ability in doing the work. I would acknowledge his determination to get to where he's going to. I would acknowledge his wisdom, his understanding, his intelligence that he had in understanding these things. And he could see that I understood him. A key part of that was memory. He would say something suddenly. He would say something just off the bat, and I would take it in. I can't think of an example of that right now, but at a later date, I would say to him, you said that the other day about your feelings about a particular person, say. And he'd be always surprised. Wow, you heard me. That's true.
Yeah, that goes
Yes.
to the receptive silence. When we talk
Yes.
about, it's not the talk to the hand kind of silence, it's the receptive silence. It's really holding that space to really hear and see people. And it sounds like, in this instance and always, that when we can share back what we heard, even especially if it was a couple of days earlier, then that person really feels seen.
Absolutely, yes, yes. Another part of that journey with this boy is I would emphasize one of my key principles that I do remind almost any group: peacefulness first. The virtue of peacefulness first. Reason comes second. Peacefulness first. Because when a person is emotionally highly sensitized, reason often goes out and people stop really hearing each other. So I always suggest, and that process allowed him to slowly but surely, after a year and a half, out of his own back, this Asperger's boy decided he's going back to school. Nobody believed it possible. He thought, they said, no ways. And I said, well, if we work with these boundaries, we can get there. And he was confident that he would work with those boundaries. He knew, he'd say, Nod taught me how to do it. They call me, Noddy. Nod taught me, I know what to do. And we went to the meetings with the school, and we sat down, and I created a set of examples of what he would do, catch his emotions as they start to rise, take the two-step option, which the family had taught him, get up and walk out, those kinds of things. And by the end of last year, with a variety of ups and downs, and he's had some extreme moments, but in general, he passed everything. He had flying colors. He even got the Principal's Award for having achieved beyond and against very, very difficult odds. And this young man has now, he's on the way to getting his pilot's license, and he's still the person he was. That's what I love about the Virtues Project. It actually makes you more the person, because you acknowledge this wide range of things. There's no repression, there's no sublimation. It's bringing out and channeling one's strengths, and then understand, building respect and for human rights, taking responsibility for that.
Well, so Nodi, I want to honor you for your steadfast commitment to this young man. It sounds like not only did he know his own strength, his gifts of character, but also how to utilize the 5 strategies, how to companion himself to hear what was going on, to identify the strategy or the virtue that would be most helpful to him so that he could live in this world and thrive in a way that helped him to reach his potential. So thank you so much for your generosity of time.
Last thing about that particular thing, Dara, see, and that is this, that although, I would talk about these things and we would do virtue picks, he always dissed it. He always said, but somewhere it was like I was able to get past that, the veneer of of the teenager who doesn't want to deal with this kind of stuff, but somehow is able to plant these seeds intrinsically in him, and subconsciously or even consciously, but he wouldn't verbally talk about them in wonderful ways. It would always be part of who he was. He never tried to take on any kind of special persona about the virtue. It was always building the structure from within. That intrinsic change is something that is one of the great challenges of Virtuous Project people, is to how do you awaken it so the person grows it from within, and as opposed to extrinsic out there experience. It must come from within, and that's a big challenge for us all.
Well, I think it's a challenge, but I also believe that the Virtues Project really rises to that challenge, because Daniel Pink has a new book out called Drive, and what really motivates us, meaning and mastery. And when we know who we really are, then it's a choice, and we can live our fullest. So when we hold that mirror up to somebody and say, I see your compassion in the way you're taking such exquisite care of this lame duck, they know that they have that quality in them, and then it becomes a choice. As opposed to some of the other programs out there that, here, let me teach you how to be one way, but I'm not going to walk in integrity because I'm going to do it in a way that's not virtuous.
Yes, yeah. And then it becomes me trying to make you into something that you may not be ready for. You need to find that process. And I love what you've emphasized, the idea of awakening the range of choices that we have in the moment. And sometimes we're going to walk into walls and fall. But other times we're going to make a right choice, and we're going to go, wow, I did that.
And you know what? When we walk into those walls and falls, that gives us the opportunity to strengthen different virtues.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Thank you. Yes.
So I look so forward to seeing you in Maryland in June, and send you a really big virtual virtues hug. And we will talk soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.